Welcome to the March 6, 2025 meeting of Dover School Committee. My name is Goldie Sapir, and I call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. And we are pleased to hold this open meeting in the Dover Sherborne Middle School Library and are also live streaming with DSC TV. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. First on our agenda this evening is community comments. We have provided a Zoom link for those who wish to make a comment, but for whom it is not possible to or prefer to attend in person this evening. Anybody on this one? No comments. So, having no community comment, we'll move to next on the agenda, which is continued discussion of year 26 budget.
Thank you. So before we open the budget hearing, we are bringing forward some adjustments in this, what we're calling version 3.0, that I want to walk through so that you understand then the numbers that we'll present in the final budget. I think we've talked briefly about some of these during our meetings, but we were able to formalize these and bring them forward this evening. So as you know, we were looking at enrollments, and there are some classes that are projected to be under our class size. So we are reducing one section. That doesn't mean that we might not see some swings within the grades, but we think with 24 sections, we have enough sections to accommodate all the classes and all the grades and stay within your class policy of 17 to 22. So that is a reduction of 60,000. And because we're reducing a section and we're seeing smaller number of classes between the grades, we are also reducing one, well, actually, let me go in order. Let's go back to the connection. So in version 1.0, we actually added a educator because we are expanding the connections up to the next age level. So it's K to 2 and 3 to 5. As the special ed department was looking at their caseload capacity, with the number of special educators that we already have in the building, we actually have capacity to move one of our existing staff over to connections. And therefore, we are taking away the request for additional staff because we have enough staff within the building to facilitate that addition of the connections program. So we are removing that from version 3.0, and that is a reduction of 70,000. So keep in mind that never was in your fiscal year 25 budget. That was a ask for 26 that we are actually pulling back on. And that's the same for the 0.2 SLP. We thought based on the caseload when we did this budget back in November that we needed to increase by 0.2. But as they look at their caseload and their existing staffing, we don't need to increase the 0.2. So that we're pulling that reduction, or we're pulling that request back as well. So something that is in your fiscal year 25 budget that we are reducing is one EA, and that's what I was talking about with the educator. And so that's a reduction of 30,000. So with that, we are reducing your in-district budget by $177,000. Flip over to the out-of-district, and we talked about that we know of some placements that we did not build into the budget, but there was concern about grossing up the budget too much because we know we're getting a substantially larger circuit breaker next year of around 1.6 million. But we do want to take that 177,000 in the in-district and we're adding it to the out-of-district. And that helps give us a little bit more towards that about 630,000 that we could potentially add to the budget. But the warrant committee and the board of selectmen do agree that this makes this makes a fiscal sense to do it this way. And with $177,000, obviously that reduces that $630,000 number. So we really are looking at about $425,000 that we are going to say, okay, we know we've got $1.6 million in circuit breaker, and we know we're going to use at least $425,000 of that for sure. And that still leaves us 1.2 for the unknowns. So with that, your bottom line stayed the same. There was just a switch of where some of the dollars were sitting. Any questions on any of those adjustments?
Do you have any detail on the adjustments in the classroom numbers? Is that here, or can you explain a little bit more about how that's gonna?
So I think we're waiting to see how the final numbers. Like I said, I think it can go a couple of different ways. I think the one that we're looking at right now was the dropping a section for, and I don't want to misspeak. I think it was
First grade.
First grade, yes. First grade if you have your book and look at first grade, we had 4 sections, but only a projection of 63. That was 15.8 was the class size. So that is the one that clearly we are asking, we're going to be removing.
Got it.
There still could be some sections changing around once we get final numbers.
Got it.
But we have the capacity to switch things around, but not necessarily have to add a section and still keep all of your class sizes within 17 to 22.
So we drop one
Exactly.
class.
One section, right,
One section of the grade.
One section of one grade.
of one grade.
So first grade had, or they currently have 4.
Yeah, so you have 25 sections
Right now.
right now. The fiscal year 26 budget will be funding 24.
Okay. And how does that align with the teachers? Or do we not have
We
that
have a
conversation?
retirement.
We do have a retirement.
So
Okay.
and that's when this works nicely.
Okay.
So that we don't have to worry about telling someone they don't have a position.
Yep.
We have a retirement.
And it's 1-to-1 in terms of retirement. Like we have
Yes.
one
Yeah.
retirement and one classroom. student.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Another way to look at it too is we currently have 5 sections of 5th grade,
Yep.
and they're rolling up to the 6th grade, and we have smaller classes behind them. So
Right.
whether we reduce from 1st grade or if we see shifts in numbers, that's something that we'll have to sit down with Dr. Reineman and see what makes sense at the end of the day. But reducing one will still keep us within the class size, the guidelines, and we'll just watch. There might be a little influx in one grade and a reduction in another, and it's frustrating because we would like to know who the teachers are and what their classrooms are going to be now, but we kind of have to be a little flexible between now and July.
Yeah, we usually wait till March to make decisions like that. 1, 2, if it doesn't involve
Right.
people. But 2, it's just we wait and see the best data that we have and the last opportunity that we have to finalize your budget for the next year. So we did ask, we do have some updated numbers as of February 25th, which gave us the knowledge to say, okay, we can move forward with this and we're still going to be able to handle even additional inflow of students based on where the raw data is right now.
And the connection, sorry, one more question. The connections is going, you were mentioning it's going to bump up to a different grade.
No, so there's be a cohort at K2. So
And a cohort.
And a cohort at 3-5.
Okay.
So there's ages. You can't have
Sure.
students more than 48 months in the same age
Yep.
group together. So we are at the point now that there's students moving up.
In both, though.
Yes, we'll have students
Okay.
in both.
Okay, great.
Yes. And we'll still have students sort of out of district student placed from
Sure.
Pine Hill in the program as well. So there's a cohort in each of those sections. So some of the students that are in K2 right now will be moving up to 3rd grade. And then there could be other students that join that group. So
you need 2 special educators for the 2 connections classroom, but looking at class size again and caseload, again, that large 5th grade moving up, looking at the special education liaisons that work with our students in the general ed classrooms, we're able to move one of those liaisons to the 2nd connections program because we no longer need them in the other classrooms. So we don't need that ask that we started with in October. Anything else for version 3.0? No?
Are there any more questions from you?
Thank you.
At this point, I would like to officially open the public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 26 budget for Chickering School. One of the major tasks of school committee is to oversee the district budget. This is a responsibility we take very seriously, engaging in a thorough budget development process as well as a monthly review of all expenditures. Our goal is to provide the best possible education for our students while remaining fiscally responsible and transparent. Over the last several months, we have worked closely with district administrators to develop the fiscal year 26 budget and are confident it aligns with the Dover-Sherborne District strategy, the Chickering School Improvement Plan, and the budget guidelines provided by the Dover Warrant Committee. We are extremely grateful to the taxpayers of Dover for their continued financial support of our children's education, and will be happy to answer any questions the community may have following this presentation. I will now turn it over to Superintendent McCoy.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Goalie did a wonderful job opening that, and I would just like to second everything she said, especially my gratitude to the taxpayers and for all of you and the time and effort you put into making sure that our schools have what they need. As Goalie mentioned, we look at our district strategy and the goals we have for the next 5 years and where we'd like to go. We look at the school improvement plan, which is developed by Dr. Reineman and her school advisory council. And then we sit down, both the central office team with Dr. Reineman and Mr. Carnes, and look at their proposed budget for next year through multiple lenses, the finance lens, the teaching and learning lens, the student support lens, to make sure it's holistic and that we're meeting the needs of all students and moving in the direction we would like to go. And so at this point tonight, we've heard version 3.0, and this is what we'd like to move forward to the town level with your approval. And so therefore, I'm going to ask Dawn, who is our steward through this process, to go over the details, and then we're happy to take questions from the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So I know some of this is repetitive, but it's sort of an opportunity for us to sort of have a great snapshot if anyone from the community wants to watch this, either watching it live or watching it afterwards. So it puts together sort of where we've progressed from November until March, which is hard to believe, right? That much time has already come by. So as we walk through a little bit of our budget development process, obviously Goalie talked about the school committee roles and responsibilities. Beth talked about the administration role and responsibilities. We had a discussion with the warrant committee. Jeff Cassidy joined us for that, and we were able to answer any questions they had about the budget. And we're fortunate enough to always have a rep in our presence from the warrant committee, because they're the ones who then will take it forward after tonight and then present it to the town. So that's their charge to take care of. And then tonight, obviously, is a public hearing in case there's any community members who had questions or concerns. It's their opportunity where actually our meeting is open for them to participate. So our budget assumptions, obviously, we want to build a budget with regular school operations, and we used to, I think we used regular. We used to have the COVID related, but now we have taken it away. But we're going to regular school operations, and we're looking for level enrollment. And obviously, we didn't see some level enrollment, so we did have a reduction. But that's one of our budget assumptions when we're building the next year's composition. We are work within compliance of the town's budget guidance, which they do level service, and so we are making sure we provide the same service this year, next year. And then obviously, as we've talked about, we align it with the district strategy and the 5 main boulders of that. And we also continue to assess our student needs, both general and special education. And as you know, special education is something that we've been investing a lot in, because we're opting to give the student the best environment for their education, and therefore the Connections program is one of those ads. But it's best for the student, it's best for ourselves as well, because as you know, for out of district, I think we can educate students in district at a more economical price than if we have to send them out. So in district, your budget drivers, obviously 85% of your budget are people. And so payroll is the largest budget driver, and we are in the final year in all of our association contracts. And with that, there is a 3% increase across all the contracts. And keep in mind also the educators have the steps and lanes, so that can add per individual anywhere between 4 and 9%. It typically, on average, is a 1.6% increase. So if you think about the COLA being 3%, add 1.6 to that to your base of educators, and you're looking at about a 4.6% increase in salaries for that group in that contract. And we will then begin negotiations in the fall with all the associations and see where we land for fiscal year 27. And obviously, payroll is based on the staffing needs. and that's based on enrollment and the student educational needs. So looking at our student enrollment, here you can see where we are projecting that we have enrollment to support 24 classroom sections. Obviously, we just talked about we had 25 in fiscal year 25. Our current enrollment is 468. Our blended projected number, where we took the highest number between the 3-year percentage of in-migration, out-migration, and the 1 year, that's sort of how we came up, gives you the 457, and our class size policy is 17 to 22. So with 24 sections, the numbers that we're projecting, we will have sections that fall within 17 to 22. We continue to do trend budgeting for operating expenses, and what that really means is where we have a line item where we're consistently not spending it, we'll trim it back, and where we have a line item potentially where we're overspending all the time, we will add to it. So that's where we're just constantly looking, not holding things the same, but looking to see what our needs are, so we're spreading the money into the right buckets. And we also are very diligent about reducing one-time expenses. And as you know, we both school districts last year put a hefty number in for the new math curriculum, and that has been taken out. And this year, too, something just to bring attention to is that we had the first year increase for our new transportation contract. And actually, that's something in version 3.0. I didn't highlight that paragraph. We did get a single, our existing contractor did give us our single bid. That's the only bid that we had. And the numbers we'll bring forward to you at your April 1st joint meeting. But they were within line with the reserves that we had. So no district saw any kind of change in their transportation number. And then it's also important, I think, just to let the town taxpayers know that they don't fully fund your budget, that we do receive some Chapter 70 funding. And based on the governor's budget, we're looking at about $1.1 million that the town will receive, and that goes directly against our operating budget. So when you think about $1.1 million of that, $1.6 million a circuit breaker, it makes our number look a little lower for purposes of what the taxpayers are actually being assessed for. And so our budget drivers in out of district, which is the other part of our budget, and just for any community viewers, keep in mind that based on the regional agreements, this budget covers any Dover resident age 3 through 22 who's placed out of district for needs that we can't fulfill here. With that, we're projecting 16 placements in fiscal year 26. That is down from 19 budgeted in fiscal year 25. Even though we're down 3, it's only a small amount in net reduction in tuition. It's down to $23,000 once we added that $177,000 back in version 3.0. We're estimating a 4% increase in out-of-district tuitions across all of our different placements. And based on our cohort of students and where they're being driven to, our transportation costs are going down $125,000 over fiscal year 25. And then again, we're talking about the circuit breaker reimbursement is estimated to be approximately $1.6 million. Keep in mind that we can calculate that with some certainty because that's based on our expenses this year. So it's always you're getting reimbursed in the next year for the expenses you incurred in the prior year.
How will that be addressed then in the following year?
When the number,
are we starting down a path of always dipping into the?
No.
Okay.
No. Keep in mind that when we talk about the placements, the coming and going, this placement that we're leaving out in the 26 budget, there is going to be a placement graduating out, aging out, and we're going to slide that one right in. So we're going to make up for it in 27, which was another reason why we had a strong case to handle it this way.
Thank you I think you mentioned that before.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I've said that so many times to so many people, I might not have necessarily said it here. So. And so there is a slight change. It's complicated, but I wanted to make sure it was known here that there is a slight change from past practices where we used to say all the circuit breaker is there to offset. We are sort of allocating a little bit of that to our budget this year. And it's actually how Sherburne operates, just so you know, that's what a lot of school districts do. I think Dover's unique in how they budget for circuit breaker. So where do we stand? Our financial statistics. So we have an operating budget of just about $11.5 million. If you round up, it's an increase of $150,000, and it's a 1.33% increase, which is, I think, with the retirements and sort of the reduction because of the enrollment, we are seeing a low increase overall. Our in-district increase is 3.47%, which I think is a little bit lower than what we typically see. You can see we saw 4.64% in the previous year. However, remember we added connections to Dover last year, so that actually brought on a lot of EAs and a staff member, so that sort of bumped that up a little bit. So there's always things going on, so it's hard to always have a percentage increase that you can rely on from year to year, but we do just sort of like to show the comparisons. And another good comparison that we do is our per pupil budgeted expenditure. So we take our projected number of students divided by our budget, and that gives us about 19.5 for fiscal year 26, and obviously it's up a little bit from fiscal year 25. Some of that too is when you have a lower enrollment, but we're still maintaining almost all the staff. There's certain fixed costs that aren't going to change unless we see a significantly lower drop. And also you have to think about that we have salary increases and such. So you would expect that number to go up on an annual basis. And our out-of-district decrease, mainly because of transportation, is down $148,000. So I think any time that we can show a decrease in out-of-district, that shows, I think, that some of our investment in district is paying off. And that is something that we would like to see continue. So there's all the numbers there in the categories. You've got 3 years of actuals, 2 years of budget, with fiscal year 25 being shown as the budget. And the highlighted column is what we're going to be approving tonight. As you know, we do make a asterisk note down there, because if you look at 22, 23, and 24, those numbers are net of circuit breaker, because at the end of the year, we take expenses and we 100% wipe out the circuit breaker. So when we look at your general fund expenses, they're net of circuit breaker. And so I think that's important to show that if we add those back, your numbers look more in line, right? So if you didn't add that back, you'd be like, and this has happened quite frequently at town meetings, like why is their budget going up so much? Because when you look at actuals, though, it's net of the circuit breaker. So I'm trying to have
people on the lower
level. Yes, if you go down to the lower level, you'll see how that makes more sense than if you looked at just the total school department.
Yeah.
So just so you know, when you look at the blue book that the town puts out, you're only going to see that top number, and that definitely throws people off. Some years we get them to do a little asterisk, but I do think it's important, especially when you're talking over $1 million in these cases. So just a little educational piece. So if we want to look at sort of the budget in a different way, I've broken it up to sort of analyzing how much of our budget goes for direct student service. So this is our in-district educational services that are sort of the direct curriculum supervision of direct services to the students. So we have, you can see in each category, our general education, including all of our specialists and our EAs, there's about 47.1 FTEs. If you look at special education, it's 21.8. Then we have our guidance and our support services. Those salaries all together at $6.44 million. I do have a note there that excludes positions funded outside of the operating budget. Keep in mind that we have a pre-K revolving where there's a second classroom that's charged to that, and we have EAs on the special ed grant. So I don't include those FTEs in here because then that could skew if someone starts to try to exactly. So that's a change I've made this year just to make sure that we are showing FTEs to the actual cost. And then if you look at expenditures, which is only $300,000, we do a lot with that $300,000. If you think about that, covers all of your textbooks, curriculum, software, general supplies, outside special education services for students, all of our technology needs, and our professional development for all staff. So with that, you have $6.75 million, which is 76% of your in-district budget goes to direct student services. So just recapping a little bit of our in-district budget adjustments. For those who haven't followed us through November to now, we have a reduction of one classroom that we talked about, the reduction of the one Gen Ed EA. Just a reminder that we are expanding our Connections program, but we're using existing staffing. We had some post-fiscal year 25 budget staffing additions for the Connections program, which if you've been looking at your monthly statements, we've highlighted that. And we also added a pre-K coordinator that's shared with Pine Hill. That was an increase to both the fiscal year 25 budget and then carries into your fiscal year 26 budget of $58,000. We had retirement savings from the one position that's retiring of $85,000, and then we did remove $43,000 from the budget that was associated with the new math curriculum that was purchased this year. So that gives a little bit of what was actually causing some of the ins and outs on top of the salary adjustments with the contractual agreement. And then the other piece of the in-district are the administrative and related support services. That includes all the shared office, central office staff, the building-based staff, and then, of course, our custodial staff that helps run the building. And on the flip side is the expenditure, which also includes the building operating and maintenance, including utilities, our transportation costs, and then there's some other non-general instructional operating expenses, which are fairly small, and that represents 24% of the budget. And I think when you take in consideration that's transportation and the maintenance of the building, that's actually a fairly good percentage as well, because we do run pretty lean at the administrative level so that we can put as much of the town's money into direct student services. And then just looking another overview of out of district, we talked about we have a tuition cost of about $2.2 million that represents 16 placements. And sort of looking at them in their age categories, we have less than 3 at the pre-K to 5 level, 9 at the 6 to 12, and 6 placements at the 12 plus. I think that information is helpful because you can sort of see that majority of our placements are in 6th grade and up. And as those age out and graduate, I think that shows you that a lot of our dollars may go away if we can continue to be successful in keeping students in district.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so I do like to share that data point because it sort of gives you some outward projection of where we could be going. And then looking at out of district too, our transportation costs are quite high. I mean, our transportation costs for the 16 placements, and they're not even all transported because some of those are residential, cost more than our in-district transportation. And again, another real benefit of keeping students in district is the astronomically high price of transporting them outside. And then we wanted to highlight too, so we talked about the in-district, the out-of-district, and I sort of highlighted this, but these are the supports that we have that are funds that come from different places, and I should probably change that. It's the federal and state entitlement grants, but I also threw pre-K revolving in there because it's an anomaly with just the 2 elementaries. But we have special education related grants of approximately $160,000. We use all that for educational assistant positions. As I mentioned, we fund one of the integrated preschool classrooms completely through the pre-K revolving fund. So that is the tuition that we collect from the general ed cohorts that are in both those classes. And then we have a small amount of title-related grants, approximately $30,000, that covers our mentoring programs, some tutoring supports from the Title I, and some professional development. So I know there's been a lot of questions about what could we be at risk for if some of this falls. This actually shows you where we wouldn't be substantially at a deficit, but tells you what we could potentially be. But we highlight this every year because we're never sure that we're going to get these grants in any given year. So this is a staple that we've always been able to disclose to the school committees and the towns just to make them aware that if something should happen, there are costs that aren't in our general fund that we may need to come ask for.
But to your point, that is a relatively small number compared to the budget.
Exactly.
That's great.
And there's like Chapter 70 is all state funded, so that that exactly right. And Circuit Breaker is too. Those are numbers that are funded with Massachusetts revenues, and so those aren't really necessarily at risk. It's the federal grants. So with that is sort of the operating budget, but I also wanted to, for any of the community to be able to highlight that we did request one capital project for Chickering. We talked about that for so long ago, you might have forgotten. But we are looking for a project cost of approximately $75,000 to complete basically the overhaul of the floors that we have undertaken at Chickering from the original building. So we're looking at doing the carpet in the admin offices, the floors in the educator workroom and the lounge, the 2 art rooms, and some stairwells. There's one other 2 small offices, but we will at that point have hit every sort of flooring that was initially installed in 2001. So when we will have pulled it all out, put new stuff in, and not that we haven't already done the CAF a while ago and the library carpet a while ago, but I think we'll have a year or 2 off without having to do any flooring. And so at this point, I do believe that has been approved by the town capital committee, but you'll see that presented throughout.
Did they take into consideration tariff impacts or too early?
Yeah, too early. We actually just had a meeting with our floor installer, and I think our biggest issue is that we've been purchasing all this off the state contract, and the state contract is going to drop some of the materials that we've been using for more sustainability, like Tide biodegradable, whatever. But I think we'll be able to get in and potentially order before that happens. And it's really because we're completing the school, right? So you wouldn't want to start introducing a new property.
Why would you?
Yeah, and he also feels that that's probably going to get so much flack that it'll be pulled back.
We'll see.
We'll see, right? But yes, no, I don't think the state contracts are guaranteed numbers initially, right? Because you're buying it off so that I think we'll be okay. But it's a good time to be wrapping that piece up.
Great.
And I think the good point of this is that we will then have gotten rid of all the VCT that does the stripping and the waxing. And so from an environmental standpoint and a cost standpoint and a labor standpoint, we're going to have a school that's very easy to take care for and low maintenance. And I think the floors have held up extremely well, so we're very happy with the product.
Very good.
And we always like to take this opportunity, meaning that we're presenting this for the community, to thank the community, both the town of Dover, for their continued support, and also a thank you to the Dover PTO, who does so much for Chickering. We want to have this opportunity to thank them for everything that they do, that they're invaluable partners in the education of our students, and I think it's important to recognize them when we present, our budget to the community. So that wraps up the presentation.
Great.
Hopefully it all makes sense now.
Yes.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from community members?
Yeah.
Okay. At this point, we will officially close the public hearing and move on to approve the fiscal year 26 budget. May I have a motion to approve the fiscal year 26 budget as presented this evening?
Martha Castle, so moved.
Thank you, Martha. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jessica. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next step is we will be presenting an abbreviated presentation of this along with the regional budget at the open hearing for the town on March 17th. I think it starts at 7:30. And then obviously this budget will be not finally approved until it goes to town meeting in May. So just keep you abreast that we've done our part, and now it's up to the town to do the rest. But we will be presenting, like I said, specifically the school budget at the open hearing on March 17th.
Thank you. So next item on the budget is financial reports.
Yeah, so you have in your packet your monthly warrant report of everything that has been approved since you last met in January. And I know that we've had a little change. Jesse, have they been in contact with you?
No.
Okay.
I was going to follow up with you after.
Yeah. So, the outside agency is processing everything now, and they are going to try to do it electronically, I believe. But I will keep you updated on that.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then looking at your fiscal year 25 monthly report, again, keep in mind that it's a running report, and I only put in bold changes. So there have been some changes to positively impact your budget, and that is now that everything's settled with Connections, I was able to go back and look at staffing, and there were EAs that we pulled out of your operating budget that needed to go to the non-resident tuition fund because they were supporting students consistently for our students that are coming in from Pine Hill. So you will see that they have been moved out of your budget and will be paid for by Sherburne. So that was an increased positive variance of about $62,000. We weren't sure how that staffing was going to work, so we let it ride, and then I actually got a little busy, but I wanted to make sure we got you the best numbers possible. So there really wasn't any other changes in your financials as of February 28th, except for that. All the other numbers are basically in the range that you saw. There's certain line items that we just keep spending down, so those variances will go down, but variances that should not be showing up are nothing has changed from that perspective. So we are looking at a out-of-district negative variance of almost $900,000. So keep in mind then we have circuit breaker of $1.2 million to cover that. And so that's sort of how this plays out a little bit. So there are some years that we actually dip quite a bit into circuit breaker, mainly because there's things that happen after that we don't know about. And we don't put placeholders in your budget for unknowns because we have circuit breaker.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right, so you'll see that some years we get back all of circuit breaker, some years we have to dip into circuit breaker. But I've never seen, I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, please. Never say never.
At the end of the day, we will be returning money back to the town on your budget.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for making it very clear for us, too. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Our next agenda item is the superintendent's comments.
All right, thank you. So I have just a few updates. I went through these updates with the regional committee on Tuesday and realized that last week was a very busy week, especially in terms of government, which I like to spend my time in the classrooms and with teachers. But last week there was a lot of time with legislators, but it was all good because we're advocating for our kids. So the first was every year we go to the State House with superintendents and METCO directors, and we advocate with our legislators that the funding, which is state funded, needs to continue to run the METCO program. And I did share with you all by email the 20-year longitudinal report, and I'm sure you've had a chance to look at it, but just to reiterate, this researcher from Tufts looked at 20 years of data from the Boston and Springfield METCO programs, and over that time she looked at the effects of the METCO program on both our Boston students, as well as our suburban Dover-Sherburne students, as well as all the other towns that participate. And in terms of supporting our Boston students, generally speaking, we see increases in their MCAS test scores. They're suspended less often. They have better attendance. Their SAT scores are higher. They take more AP exams and do better on them. They attend more competitive colleges, and their graduation rates from four-year colleges is also higher. So significant impact for our Boston students. In terms of our suburban students, and for us that's our Dover and Sherburne kiddos, the quantitative data says that there is no impact on them, that they continue to achieve at high rates, as we know our students do, and that really it's more in the qualitative data and the richness of experiences and perspectives they gain from being able to, sit with and become friends with and learn with students from Boston. So I think that was great research and data to support the program, and we certainly hope it continues for the foreseeable future. The second governmental event last week was our roundtable. So the state of Massachusetts is broken up into roundtables of superintendents based on your region. So we belong to the Tri-County Roundtable, which is roughly 42 of our local towns. And so we come together most often for our own professional development and to share. But last week we came together and invited our local representatives. So from Dover, we had Representative Josh Tarski, who you know is new, and he is a former teacher and principal, so he totally understands our world. I knew I met him somewhere before. Like, there you are. So it was a great conversation with him. And so, we mingle and we talk about what's new in our schools and how things are going and what's happening on the Hill. And there's then a formal presentation from some of the superintendents thanking them for changes that have come over the last year, but also, of course, our needs moving forward. And just so that you have a bigger understanding of kind of the statewide scope of education, the things that we as superintendents expressed support for were around special education as a state and looking at how we're funding special education and if there's more efficient ways of doing that. So we're asking the officials to bring together a task force to kind of look at how we can do this better for all of our kiddos. The second priority we identified was around the future of public education and the promise of fulfilling educational reform. So as you know, one of my passions is around 21st education and reforming education, making it student-centered and the portrait of a graduate and all those things. So we in DS years ago had the Academic Innovation Committee that launched all this work. We're now looking to do an Academic Innovation Committee at the state level. And really kind of be, again, leaders in education about how we do things differently, more project-based learning, more standards-based learning, those sorts of things. And I was the first volunteer to be on that committee, so thank you. I haven't been chosen. I'm sure there's a long list.
That's great.
The third priority is around student discipline. So you may or may not be aware, but the code of conduct changed in terms of what we can suspend students for. And the intent was good there in terms of wanting to make sure that we, educate our students and have them learn from their mistakes and provide alternate options when discipline is required. But there are certain circumstances where our principals really need to have that option and they don't currently. So we're asking that we give that power back to the schools. And we use it scarcely, but as needed. So we'll see where that goes. And the last is around funding for not something that necessarily you're concerned with, but the future of our rural schools. Believe it or not, Sherburne happens to be considered a rural district, so we get rural funding. But for districts that are more rural than Sherburne, they certainly are wanting to make sure that their needs are fulfilled in terms of their student populations and the unique challenges they face. So that was at the State House. And then lastly, something fun is that, as you know, we launched the new website a few years ago. And we had these vibrant pictures of the kiddos, but if you look at the student faces, they're now much older. So we had Mr. Dillon, James Dillon, who's a Dover dad. He has 2 graduates that went through the system. And he has been on all 3 campuses this week taking photos. And so we're excited to update the website. We're excited to have a new annual report this year. And then all of the slideshows and things you see will be with present faces. But just so much joy. Denny's spent some time with him walking around to the classrooms. We've seen some of the images come through already, but lots of great things to celebrate.
Fantastic.
That's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Those are all great updates.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, and you have a couple.
Oh, yeah, just 2 very quick updates. First, you've heard a lot about math, elementary math for me this year. Something I realized I hadn't added at the Dover School Committee is one of the things I've been doing this year to understand the math curriculum more and what our teachers are experiencing, what our students are experiencing, is I've been going in and guest teaching math lessons, which is a former high school teacher. It's a different area, but it's been really, really insightful in planning with teachers, seeing what they are kind of dealing with on a daily basis and taking over a new curriculum. And I've learned a ton. I think it's made me a much more empathetic administrator to be able to understand a little piece of what our teachers are facing in implementing this new curriculum. But it's been great to kind of be on the ground with students. I was in a 2nd grade class at Chickering a couple weeks ago. And I was so impressed by the fact that we gave students a task, and then students said, I need a number line for this. I need to use Unifix cubes for this. I'm going to use the beaded number line for this. So I was just very struck by the fact that students knew what tool they needed to help them complete the task, and they just went and got it. And I think it's a great reflection of the work that our math coach has been doing this year and just how the teachers have really leaned into the new math curriculum. So that has been fun, challenging, and all sorts of interesting getting to do that. And the second thing I was just going to update on, it's interesting when you see really cool things going on in the school. And today I was at Chickering, and I saw just a fascinating project that encapsulates so much. I was in the 5th grade class, and they were doing a science project learning about the food chain. and they were kind of organizing the food chain based on these little cards that they had and kind of saying like who eats who and how does the school system work. So there's science, there was a lot of executive functioning, there was a lot of collaboration because students were agreeing and disagreeing with where things should be placed. The really neat part of it was that there was a computer science aspect of it. So our wonderful tech integrator, Mr. Gaffney, he has these little robots. So once students were done organizing their food chain, they got an iPad, a mini robot, and they used coding to move the robot along the food chain.
Oh, wow.
It incorporated math and geometry because part of the programming of these robots was understanding angles, that this needs to move, the robot needs to move northwest at a 45-degree angle.
Wow.
So it was mind-boggling to me, everything that was happening in this one activity that students were engaged in, and it was kind of like just like the best of what you like to see in the classroom, and I think what our students are really lucky to be able to engage with. So just want to highlight that great work going on as well.
And if I can follow up, the fact that Denny has been in the classes teaching math has, I think, gained him so much respect from the teachers and appreciation, but also the kids. He's like, one of them now. So he was out at the buses the other day, and all of a sudden there was a swarm of kids around him. He's like, oh, good.
Children tried to hug me. I was uncomfortable, but okay.
You gave him high fives.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So moving on to our next items. We don't have any discussion item or action items on the agenda. Our next item is consent items. There are going to be 3 items that we're going to discuss individually, but vote totally on 3 of them. The first one is Dover School Committee minutes from January 14, 2025. Are there any changes to the minutes? All right. Next item is annual vote on Massachusetts school choice law. Mrs. McWood, would you kindly provide some context on this?
Sure. So for those of you who don't remember from last year, this is an annual vote that you as a school committee have to take. And this is whether or not to allow students from other towns to attend Chickering School. Oftentimes districts that are larger and might have several open seats in a classroom or across grades would engage in this because it could be, it brings in revenue. Mm-hmm. When it comes down to it, it brings in $5,000 per student, and as Dawn went over in our slideshow, we spend roughly $19,500 a student. So for us, it doesn't make fiscal sense, especially since our class sizes are so small. A shift of 1 or 2 students can either require a new section or not. So in the past, we have chosen not to participate, and in fact, instead, when we do have a few open spaces and we know that there's wiggle room, we often invite more students from Boston to join us. So my recommendation would be to continue to vote no. So therefore, currently it's a no if you approve the consent agenda, but if you'd like to change it to a yes, then that's at your discretion.
I don't have any further questions on that now.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. So next item is gifts. We are very grateful for the Dover Cultural Council for their donation of $800 to support a community-wide reading of If You Plant a Seed. So we also need to vote on accepting this gift too. So these are the 3 items. Okay. Any questions? All right. So
take a motion.
Okay. Yeah. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? To approve the minutes from January 14, accept the gift of $800 from Dover Cultural Council, and keep the annual vote on Massachusetts school choice law as a no.
Kate Cook, so moved.
Thank you, Kate. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jesse. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is communications for the members. In your packet, you will find the regional school committee minutes from November 5th of 2024 and December 3rd of 2024, and also Sherburne School Committee minutes of October 15 of 2024 and November 12th of 2024. We don't need to vote on this, just for your information. Any items you would like to have for May 13 of 2025 meeting?
I think one of the things that is still hanging out there is we wanted to talk about technology in the classroom and screen time.
Right.
And Jeff asked that we wait until May when he's here. So Debbie and I will certainly prepare for something for that.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
great.
The May, it's the DS meeting in May, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Thank you.
right.
So I think we're at the
Should we move
Yeah.
to close?
yes. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Martha Castle, so moved.
Thank you, Kate. May I have a second?
Kate Cook, second.
Thank you, Kate. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right.
Thank you.
We're adjourning the meeting at 7:21.
Great.
All right.
We're done.